Howdy, it's Tubalcain again, and it's cold outside, so I am in my basement and piddling around, and I'm like you, I've got a lot of oil cans. If you go to auctions, every box that you buy has an oil can in it, so you end up with a lot of them, and I usually leave a lot of them at the auction site because they're messy and I hate to put them in the trunk of the car. But here's just some of the oil cans that I got around the shop here, but there are many more out in the garage, and I have larger capacity ones out there for my engines that'll hold a squirt type oil cans like an engineer might use. And you know what, I'm like you. Ever since I was 1 year old and I discovered gravity, I kept falling down as I was learning how to walk, and I've been cursing gravity ever since, as you probably have. Although we need a little bit of gravity to keep us from floating around, but sometimes I think that old Newton gave us too much. But some of these oil cans, such as this Eagle number 66, you know, they'll knock over if you walk by too fast. But an Eagle 66 is one of my favorite oil cans, and I think it is beloved by many machinists. And there it is, Eagle number 66. Now this one is so old it doesn't even have the number on it, so that's been around since Methuselah, I think. But let's talk about some different ways to prevent this from happening. You know, they fall off the machine, and when it vibrates, and that's why there's a lot of dents in these. And these are brass oil cans. Perhaps the engineers at Eagle finally woke up one day and said, hey, we need to put a broader base on those, and they did. And this is much less wobbly, and I know they make a bigger one with a rather large reservoir in this style. But there are many other kinds here, and I don't use this kind too much anymore, but still I got a bunch of them. This little thing here is pretty nice, but also it tends to knock over. It's a Craftsman, but since it's short and it's stubby and stout, there's less of a tendency for that. Someone here had some sense. Now that's a Plews. You ever heard of a Plews? I think it was bought at Napa. But I think as an afterthought they said, hey, these things tip over. We're getting a lot of customer complaints. Let's add this base on there, and that's what they did, and that's spot welded on there. But that makes it pretty sturdy in comparison to the Eagle. I interrupt this video to show you a preview of another video coming up. I just bought this Neodymium magnet. That was $8, but it's 1 inch in diameter and it's about a ½ inch in length, and boy is it strong. And in an upcoming video I'm going to do a series of experiments with these big thick magnets like this, and their effect on falling in aluminum or copper tubing or pipe or angle irons and so on. So I just think this is so fascinating. But watch now as I drop this big magnet down into a copper tubing that's wrapped with yet more copper. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8. It took about 8 seconds for that to drop through there. It defied gravity, so keep watching now for my upcoming video. I think you might like that. Back to oil cans. There was a character in comics, I believe it was a comic book called Oil Can Harry. So if anybody out there remembers what that Oil Can Harry character came from, what cartoon, let me know. Inspired by this now, and I'm trying to think of ways to keep this thing from falling over all the time. Oh, and when they fall over, they either fall on the ground and get dented, but if they lay down like this, there's oil all over the place the next day. So that's what's so aggravating about these. They need to be kept in a vertical position. But inspired by the Plews here and that little base there, I thought, well, that's easy enough. I'll do that. So I wasted, and I do emphasize wasted, an hour making this. This is made out of brass, an old kick plate from a door at the high school. And I made that such that it would go on to this. Pretty tight fit. I finally got it on. That was a struggle. But this was the idea, and I thought that I would have a little bit better fit there, so that it would just stay on by friction, but that's just as loose as a goose. So what I need to do would be to solder that on to the brass, but I thought, well, I don't want to deface this in any way because these are hard to come by. They don't make these anymore, I don't believe. So that was a bit of a failure, but it would have added stability to it. But let's look at a couple other solutions to this nightmare. I drained the oil out of this, at least for this video, because it was such a mess. But back to my super magnets here, my neodymium magnets, and I got these in all sizes. And I got these ideas from my brother as far as the magnets, but if I would put one of these down in the bottom of the oil can, like this, and so there's one, but I could use more than one. Put the oil in there, and you see, now that would stick onto the machine table, so if I was on the Bridgeport mill, it's not going to vibrate off. However, you know, magnets, as I always say, can be your best friend or your worst enemy, and they're going to attract chips. And many people tried to talk me into putting magnets into one of my other oil cans, which I'll bring over here in a second. I don't know where it's at, but that would be a solution if the chips don't bother you. Finally found it here. It was over on the lathe. But remember this from one of my other videos, and my buddy Train Man 4602 Dave made this presentation oil can for me, and I'd love it. But somebody said, well, put some magnets in the bottom of this type of can, and then, because they would see it vibrating on the Bridgeport, and then it won't fall off. But I don't like the idea because of it collects the swarf. Here's another potential solution, and that would be to put a shot in the bottom of this, just as a weight, and it could be a lead shot, but if it's real fine shot, it's going to interfere with the pickup down there for the pump. So I would have to use coarser shot, like 00 buck or something like this, because we can still get quite a bit of oil or fluid in there, as you can imagine, as opposed to finer shot. But this actually is steel shot that you can buy at any sporting goods store like Gander Mountain or such, and it's slingshot ammo is what it is, and some of that could be put in there. I don't know how much I would need, but that gives it a little bit of weight, makes it a little bit better, so that's a possible solution. And if you don't like it, you can take it out. It's not permanent. I told you I had more than one of these. This is 20 weight oil in there. You know, a lot of my oil cans I mark as to what oil is in there. This one was for my South Bend video, the lubricant C that was used for certain things. They had A, B, and C. Anyway, on this one I took solder, and I wrapped about, that's at least about a ½ pound, because there's 2 layers, and I got it soldered at where it ended and soldered where it started, and you know, solders pretty well, if you can imagine that. And I must have 50 rolls of solder, so I'm not short of that. But be sure and use, this is solid solder. It is not rosin core, it is not acid core, but don't use acid core whatever you do, because it's so incredibly corrosive. But I used solder like this. Oh, that's rosin core. This is a high test. That's good stuff. Yeah, remember when it was $1.10 for a roll of solder? That must have been around for a while. So this is a possibility, and that's a lot of weight on there. And if you don't like this, you can throw it away, or take it off rather, and it will slide on there, but it won't unwrap. Now you can do the same thing with copper wire, and you would prefer to use a heavy wire like a number 8 or a number 10, but copper wire is so expensive that you know, it costs more than the oil can. This may be problematic later on as oil oozes and drips into there and becomes a mess. I don't know, but I'm going to experiment with that. But that's going to stay on there. You know, when I'm watching TV, and I don't do that too much, or even resting in bed, I can't get to sleep, so I think about things, foolish things probably, but I thought, well, I can take a piece of this Delrin. This is 3-inch diameter Delrin, cut it to, 1/4 1/4 inch thick, about where my thumb is there, bore it out and make a base for it, but then it would have to be fastened on there some way. And then, being delusional as I was, I also thought, well, there's a piece of steel, and that could be somehow, well, this is way too thick, I would cut it off again, so we got about 1/4 inch, some way or another, put that on there, and I could even pour molten lead in there to fasten it, or epoxy, but I don't want to deface this classic oil can in any way, so I continued to think of solutions and came up with, so then I was back to thinking, well, I'll just make a disc of some kind and glue this onto a disc to stabilize it, so it would be more like the plues. And well, it could be steel, it could be brass, or plastic. Well, I got all kinds of this polycarbonate, tougher than a rhino, you know, 1/4 inch thick. So I thought, well, I'll just cut a 3-inch circle of that on the bandsaw, and I did. There it is. I can take that masking off here, and I thought, well, how am I going to fasten that? Some kind of glue? Well, the oil might prevent that from working, but I think this will make it pretty darn stable. And that was cheap and quick to make, and I wasted my time, of course, with this thing. So I thought, well, I'll use some double stick tape, but I'm not sure I got enough of it. So let me put that on there and see what we got. Could also use some kind of mastic that would set up, something like what they call liquid nails, something on that order probably would work pretty well too. So let me cut this double stick tape, see what we got. There we go, 2 strips of tape on there. That's like a foam tape. That's why I'm afraid it might dissolve when it gets oil on it. And I like to center this, so that's why you see those lines on there. I don't like it. I waste too much time, as you can see. And then if this will come off, this masking, not that it matters. And you could make that any diameter you want. I made it 3-inch. You know, there's a lot of extra weight here with the spout and the pump and all that. That's part of what the problem is. But when there's a little oil in there, I think it's going to be a little stable. But, you know, if I had it to do over, now I think I'd make that 3.5 inch. Just out of curiosity, I think I'll do a destruction test here and see how well that double stick tape holds. Wow. That really held. Now, other than if that gets soaked by oil and so on, that was a pretty good way to fasten it. So, as you watch this, I suppose some of you are going to say, well, I got a better idea, and there's probably all kinds of other ways of doing this, so put them in the comments. In my next video, I'll get down to a little bit more serious business. Be sure and look through my entire catalog of perhaps as many as 300 or 400 videos. There's a lot of them on there regarding machine shops, so look through those if you haven't already seen them. Tell your friends about my channel, and be sure and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and this is Tubalcain saying so long for now.